everybody. Today is May 23rd, and this is the Links with Friends show. We're your friends and or hosts. Level 1 techs.
A lot's happening this week, including Computex. Well, is it this week or next week? I don't know. It all runs together.
It'll be this week for them when they're watching it.
No. It is the next week, but I'll be there because things will be happening.
Okay. He will still be here when they watch this.
Oh, okay, yeah. For this episode. Right.
Well, one of the big questions of 2023 was 230?
230.
I always forget the number.
Yeah, I think 230 is right.
Yeah, Section 230, right. Are the social media companies and other people who post things online responsible for what you post on their website? And it went to the Supreme Court, and we were all waiting. And of course, we get the usual Supreme Court popcorn fart, where they kind of rule on it, but they don't really get into the meat of it.
Supreme Court avoids ruling on law shielding internet companies from being sued for what users post. So for now, Section 230 stands as it was originally written. Which is weird to say that, the court is deciding what things were written retroactively.
But a big one for the tech companies.
Yeah.
Now I kind of agree with this, though, because this was about the terrorism cases.
Yeah.
And I don't agree that Google had anything to do with that.
Yeah, it not ruling this way would have opened up a can of worms far, far worse.
Do you want to be responsible for what people post on the forum?
No.
Even if there's an algorithm, I think as humans, we have to have enough agency to observe those things and understand them. Yeah. I know that's hard for a lot of people, but just gonna have to step up. I'm sorry.
I think there's probably an opportunity for other laws to step in where like the algorithm is so egregiously bad that it's causing harm. There's plenty of opportunity to get legal relief in those scenarios that this doesn't need to be affected either.
I don't know. I think a properly motivated and, well-rounded citizen could just apply their own filters to that, as I do with all social media.
What's a citizen? I think you mean a consumer, right?
No, I was thinking about things like where your bank account is just arbitrarily closed by your bank because the algorithm decides, and you have no real effective redress to get those things dealt with.
Now we're talking about sound money.
Yeah,
I'm totally with you on that. The government should not dictate what I can use for money. And oh boy, are we seeing more and more of that. We'll talk about that in the business section. Actually, there might be a little bit of crypto in here.
Yeah.
But first, there is the opposite end of that spectrum, right? When the government just says, this is bad for you, and so you must not have it.
Montana to become the first U.S. state to ban TikTok. The thing we talked about last week, well, they passed it. It's probably going to be found unconstitutional, but it's there.
All 20 teens in Montana are just devastated right now.
But they can't tell each other.
You know what's not banned in Montana? The Level 1 forums.
Are you trying to make Level 1 forums the new TikToks? I don't think that's going to fly.
I don't think that's equivalent.
Post your memes about dual actuator hard drives.
That's like heroin versus strong coffee.
The Venn diagram's just two separate circles.
Not the same itch. Now, how are they going to enforce this? Well, with fines. How do they determine who's violating it? I don't think anybody knows yet.
You're violating it if they think you are.
Are you looking at memes on TikTok? No! And then they're like, grab your phone.
The sea shanties have been banned.
Are we going to see a story where somebody's phones get seized and gray keyed just so they can find out if they were violating the TikTok ban? So
probably.
Well, the tech companies do lie to us, though. That is something that we have to keep right in the front of our minds at all times. When you're using these products, and we all use them, these products are, meant to do something other than what they say they're meant to do. And a big one is to deceive you, which is what Google got caught doing.
The Ars Technica headline is Google to pay an $8 million settlement for lying to Texans. And the lying to Texans part is a quote from the state attorney general.
It was definitely a lie. So we actually covered this before. Radio DJs got on the radio and they're like, oh my God, my Pixel phone, it's so good. It's so amazing. Look what all the stuff that it can do. Now you might say, well, maybe they really did do that. The problem is Google never actually gave them phones. They were supposed to retroactively, but somehow that never happened.
Oops.
So the fake ads went out. They didn't even call them ads. The people were paid, but they never had a Pixel phone in their hand. That, I think, constitutes a lie.
Fun time.
Ah, yes. And again, the sound money. Now, I'm not going to say the cryptocurrency is sound, but it is an alternative to, as Wendell pointed out, something that we are not allowed to escape. Just simply by existing, I owe money that they issue back to them. Think about that. So crypto got popular for that reason. And because it got popular,
Biden administration's crypto czar says the DOJ will target digital asset exchange platforms.
Is this supposed to be a depiction of the crypto czar?
Yeah, I really like the stock photography.
Yeah,
yeah, that's, she's the teacher who's,
be the czarina.
she's very strict. I don't think we're allowed to hit our kids with limbs anymore.
A switch anymore.
I want to know. I mean, okay, I'm honestly fine with digital asset exchange platforms being audited and logged and blah blah blah. But still, the level to which, let's say, HSBC or Chase is audited is much less than these entities, and that is a problem.
And they are announcing, easing us into that boiling kettle of milk every day. They're going to make their own digital currency.
Yeah. That one's got the logging and monitoring built in.
Yeah, probably way more. It's not just going to be a blockchain. And as we'll learn about the EU a little bit later, they're not even satisfied with the blockchain. They want even more. And this one harkens back to, was it 2017?
It was a long time
ago. It was
ago.
one of the first episodes of the Level 1 News where we spoke in absolutes and we were like, this is a thing. This is what's going on. And it's taken this long.
But we already knew.
We knew.
Yeah, everyone knew.
Every sensible person who looked at it knew. But this Letitia James, it's taken her this long. I don't think she had this job back then, in fairness, to get to the bottom of it. But she did find what we all already knew.
3 companies to pay $615,000 in New York Attorney General investigation over faked net neutrality comments. Yes, that thing that we said a long time ago where a bunch of people showed up and commented and they said, it's really good for you to reel back net neutrality. It only cost $615,000.
That was under Ajit Pai's.
Yeah.
Wow, it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And these were not actually people. They were fake, which we learned shortly afterwards.
There was one that was real
Well,
that they mentioned in the article.
no, it's more
that I read.
insidious than that, but go on.
Well, it was marketing companies.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, you're thinking, how does this tie back to Charter Communications or Frontier or AT&T or whatever company? Everybody's been really careful not to tie them back to the communications companies, but they're involved, I'm sure. That is without question. Now, there is a keyhole here, though, that is disturbing from the Attorney General, and that is if the customers had given permission to AT&T to do this, the penalties wouldn't have been as harsh as $615,000. And to be clear, I think that for the accomplishment of net neutrality is in question, $615,000 is a pittance. That's basically get out of jail free. $615,000 is a nothing burger. These companies are going to continue to operate and do things when they should have the corporate death penalty. That aside, if you sign up to an ISP and in your ISP agreement, you give the ISP permission to lobby on your behalf, they would not have been fined. So I think that's going to be baked into future ISP agreements, which is incredibly insidious.
But it shouldn't be a corporate death penalty. It should be criminal charges. This
Well,
should be X number of charges of identity theft.
I thought
Yeah.
you were just going to go straight to the darkest and say just straight death penalty.
Well, yeah, I'm for that, but I understand the Overton
It's a little
window.
extreme, yeah.
We gotta ease into that.
Yeah, legal eagles in the audience, now that they've got this ruling, can they also be sued for identity theft by the individuals there? That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Stole my information and you submitted it to a government website as me.
Yeah.
How that seems like open
It
and
seems
shut.
like a slam
identity.
dunk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You might have trouble showing damages, but this is criminal, right?
That is criminal theft. Yeah. It's like, what's your intent here? To defraud the American people. That was the intent here, because the FCC, it's a federal agency, and they were trying to seek public comment. They were trying to defraud the public.
And to misrepresent me and take away my right to representation.
Yeah.
I could try that case. And that was the
Let's make it happen, chat. Come on, get on it.
GoFundMe, $2 million. I will pass the bar.
I will suffer through those law classes.
And it would have to be the New York bar, wouldn't it? That is the FCC. the great government people who take care of us and all sorts of communication stuff. Now things have changed since then. However, because of that change, there's been a deadlock. Maybe it's finally over.
Biden intends to nominate Ana Gomez to the FCC vacant commissioner seat, according to this report. Now, the previous nominee was kind of deadlocked. They couldn't get enough votes to be confirmed. They think that Ana Gomez is going to be able to get enough votes to be confirmed, although the article that I read didn't provide a single detail as to why Ana Gomez is going to be confirmed, but not the other person.
Yeah, this was a tough one to find. Seeking Alpha is one of the last-ditch efforts I'll use for a paywall alternative. But yeah, the last one did have a lot of questionable partisanship. Of course, the Jeep Pie was as far as you could go in the other direction. So can we ever escape that, really?
Yeah, it really is insane how Ajit Pai was like, no, this is the FTC. The FTC. It was a master class in subterfuge and misdirection to make this government entity less functional against these kinds of problems.
I'm going to reorder these because these are in order of time rather than, I thought it'd be better the other way, but this happened first. This happened on the 10th. Oh, come on. Blockworks.
The pop-ups have been getting more and more aggressive on every website.
And so we have been following the Coinbase saga. Coinbase got the Wells notice. They know something is coming, but you're not allowed to know what. And so they pleaded, they said, hey, SEC, why don't you just tell us what you want us to do? Why don't you just give us some rules? And the SEC had a one-word answer for that.
The SEC responds to Coinbase request for action, no. I read this as the Coinbase is looking for something to nail Coinbase for, but they don't actually know yet. And so they're going to use this request so that they can retroactively claim that something they discover in the future was notice all the way back in that point in time without them actually having a case.
And his big excuse was, you don't get to dictate my timeline. I get to take as long as I want for this. I am the law. But Coinbase is, I think to most observers, they're making a reasonable request here, right?
Yeah.
What are the rules that you want me to follow? And the government says, no, you don't get to know that. And it makes sense that these people would see something happening here to one company in one industry, and they're like, wait a minute, that could be applied to all of us eventually.
Yes, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce slams the SEC and backs Coinbase in legal fight. Like I said, I think Coinbase, they've got some good lawyers because, what did I say a couple of weeks ago? They're laying the foundation for an excellent defense for themselves because of the moves that they're making publicly with this. That's the only reason to take a lot of this public is so that you can point and say, hey, we asked to be we asked to be notified. We didn't, no one gave us this instruction. Nobody said these are the rules we have to follow. Ergo, we could not have done this with intent or maliciously.
And when it comes to Americans needing to follow the rules without ever really being able to understand them, now in this case, we do have them. They are, how many pages?
So many, and they change year to year.
500,000 that changes every year. You spend your whole life keeping up with it. In fact, it is a career.
So complicated.
Which is what this is about. I'm talking about the tax system.
I couldn't claim a hot water heater replacement as a deduction because the rules changed this year and it makes no sense.
So what choice do you have? You can either be constantly vigilant of the tax code. That's going to take up most of your time, or you can hire somebody else to do it. And those people, also criminal. As we've determined, TurboTax is just cheating every way that it can. And so maybe the newest solution is to just let them tell us like we always wanted to, except that's not really what this is.
The IRS is building its own online tax filing system. Tax prep companies aren't happy. Don't worry, it's still going to be a huge pain in the butt, and it's not going to automatically just tell you what you owe.
Plus, there is a conflict of interest here because there's an entity that wants me to pay them, and then they're the ones who have to help me pay them less, like deductions, for example.
Yeah.
Is the IRS really going to be fair and tell us all the deductions we could take, or are they going to want more money for themselves? It's an interesting...
Yeah, it seems like a really easy pop-up. Like you just have a question like, did you do some home improvement this year? Yes. Did you replace your hot water heater? Yes. Good news. You get
There's a checkbox of all the things that you could have replaced in your home. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you buy a hot water heater that's at least this energy efficient? If you did, you can deduct this much of the percentage of the whatever. How hard is that?
I don't envy the person who has to build that form, though, just because there's a lot of fields that's got to be in there.
Yeah.
So you know what would fix all of that? 20% sales tax and no income tax. Easy solution, but then the rich people would have to pay a lot more. And the corporations, wouldn't be able to get away with what they get away with. And the churches and the drug dealers and the prostitutes, they could pay taxes. Well, when is the last time either of you listened to AM radio in your vehicle?
Accidentally the other day when I was trying to change out a CD.
Well, let's say not by accident.
I don't remember.
I just can't imagine that I've done it in my adult life. But do we still need it?
Congress moves to preserve AM radios in cars. Why? It could be useful in emergency situations.
Because all of Congress is in their 80s and they probably do listen to AM radio.
Nostalgic.
Yeah.
I used to listen to the serials.
AM radio is so easy to build a transmitter and stuff, though. If something really, really catastrophic did happen, it would be easy to reestablish communication with the populace via AM radio.
Also easy and cheap to just have a handheld one
Yeah.
in your car. If that's what you want, you could mount it.
Yeah.
Third parties could sell it to you. You might have to put an antenna somewhere, but probably not.
Think about the Fed trying to co-opt, for example, Sirius satellite radio in the event of an emergency. It's like all that encryption and nonsense is just going to be a huge pain.
They want to keep it. I don't know.
Well, it's not really that big of a deal.
It's probably like $1 different for the car makers.
Probably not even.
It's not that big a deal. And the whole China US thing, it's just getting hotter and hotter, and the AI war has caused even more heat among the intellectual theft world.
The DOJ charges former Apple engineer with theft of autonomous car tech for China.
They had a lot of evidence against this guy.
Yeah.
He was definitely doing it.
It was perhaps even more evidence than the guy that had the flash drive and the hard drives that was trying to get through the San Francisco airport.
And he got a lot of it too. Yeah. He is currently in China. He did get out, and they're trying to figure out how to get him back. I don't think he's going to come back.
You don't think China will send him back?
I think they're perfectly okay with what he did. And is this the end of our saga for this flaxen-haired beauty?
Yep.
I hate to see it, but on the other hand, God, does she deserve it?
Disgraced Theranos CEO Elizabeth Holmes must report to prison on May 30th. Did you read the article with the person who went to stay with them for a weekend? She called herself
I think we covered that last week.
Liz Holmes. Oh, yeah. Was that last week?
Yeah.
Look
how relatable I am.
Yeah.
Elizabeth was the deep voice turtleneck, but Liz is the mild-mannered prison inmate.
Maybe she was going for like the wife thing, like.
Do you think
wife and mom?
Once she gets locked up and somebody steals her lunch or whatever, do you think she's going to have to morph back into Elizabeth to assert herself in the pod?
I would be surprised if she's not pardoned in a year or so or less.
Yeah, didn't she just have a baby as well? Not that long ago. I guess they don't care, but. Yeah.
Plus, there's plenty of people to take care of the baby because she's got the rich husband or boyfriend or whatever he is. Maybe she'll write a book about it. I love prison books. And we have another one of these situations where we know who did it. We've charged them. There's no hope of ever punishing them.
Russian national charged with ransomware attacks against critical infrastructure. We know who. We just don't know where.
This dude got a lot. He got a New Jersey police department. He got some hospitals. He tried some infrastructure. I think that was was it water or electricity or something he went after. Lots of ransomware. It was the BitLocker ransomware, or Lockbit. I'm sorry. BitLocker is an actual service, isn't it? Very successful at it, but they have now uncovered him.
He's got his own article on the Department of Justice website.
Such a proud day. You think his parents printed that out?
They have it on the fridge, yeah. That's our son.
And we have the big issue right now with Silicon Valley and the other tech hotspots in that they've become hellscapes of homelessness and housing discrepancy, crime. So a lot of those people are leaving. Where are they going to go? Well, the government wants to make new hellholes. So they're going to try.
Spread the hell out.
Yeah. That's a good way of putting it, right? We have all kinds of hotspots. We need to just smooth it out so everybody's at a baseline misery.
U.S. aims to turn middle American cities into new tech hubs with a $500 million investment. I was surprised by this for 2 reasons. One is I figured that all of the money would go toward like revitalizing downtown San Francisco, because the rents there are going to have to adjust to like half or a third, of the amount per square footage. So this actually could be good. This could be good for more rural places. Okay, roll out the infrastructure. Think about how much rural work could be done, here or in Alabama or whatever with the work from home thing.
Middle American cities, though, kind of implies that it's going to go to cities that already have that kind of infrastructure.
We need to keep this the hell out of here. We do not want these people. But if you are inclined toward this sort of thing and there's a university in your town, you can come up with a plan and submit it and say, this is what I want to do to get a little piece of that money. It needs to be about some of the hot button issues, like AI or cybersecurity. There was a small list, but quantum, artificial intelligence, biotech, cybersecurity was one of them.
A lot of those would be really hard to do if you're not, San Francisco.
Why?
Well, AI. It's like, I've just got, a few $100,000 of GPUs laying around.
They make these things called trucks. You can load
And
them
people
on.
also want to work remotely now, so
Yeah.
it doesn't really...
Yeah, I
Easier
guess
than
you can have
ever.
that in the cloud.
And whereas we do not tell our crypto companies anything about the rules, they just have to fly in the dark, the EU has laid them out.
EU states approve world's first comprehensive crypto rules. There's a lot here. Most
They're
of it,
behind a paywall.
yeah, most of it seems to be just around logging and knowing the identity of everybody to the nth degree. They want to know everywhere you've ever lived, you currently live, and all of your other financial transactions in order to tie it all together, which I don't think the crypto bros are going to go for.
And every transaction on an exchange must have a real name behind it. So if you're on Coinbase and you want to send some to a random address, if you want to pay a ransomware, you're going to have to move that to your own wallet and then move it again, because Coinbase will not do the transaction without knowing who's on the other end.
What if you want to give a financial donation to something like Model M Addicts, but you want to do it anonymously because you're embarrassed that you really like the Model M keyboard after all of these years, and you don't want people to be able to trace that transaction because it's a little embarrassing?
That's literal terrorism.
Yeah, that's how this bill is written. There are no loopholes for things like that.
I'm imagining a world where you're running for office and the hit ad on you, the only thing they can find is that you like Model M keyboards, but it's a really dramatic black and white ad.
This heathen is using keyboards that contributed to the warming of our planet in the 1980s.
That's not American. Paid for by Wendell's opponent in this political ad.
Well, one political hot button issue that I'm sure resulted in a lot of payments was Activision Blizzard, and they have gotten a small win.
Microsoft wins EU antitrust approval for Activision deal vetoed by the UK. This also caused a little bit of a kerfuffle in the UK, which the Reuters article doesn't mention. Because now that this is approved, it's another source of embarrassment or whatever for the UK. And they want to know why it wasn't approved and blah, blah, blah. There's just...
Because they probably greased the right palms in the EU.
Yeah, it's just so much drama.
I think Australia is a yes, right?
Yeah.
EU is a yes. US is a no comment at the moment.
Which will be a yes.
And then
Yeah.
UK is a no.
They also... I think this was the article that made it clear that the deal was predicated on the cross-platform thing and the Sony thing and something else.
Call of Duty.
The Game Pass was in here too. They brought up Game Pass.
Well, it's interesting because the UK said, we don't like this because of cloud gaming. And the EU said, we like this because of cloud gaming.
Yeah.
You wonder if they're just still saying the opposite of one another because, that's what you do.
Well, that was one of the things that actually impressed me is the EU lawmakers had more of a clue about this. I mean, can you imagine some of our senators debating this, trying to figure out if Game Pass is legit a good thing for consumers or anti-competitive in some way or harmful for other companies like Sony?
I mean, they're going to have to debate it.
Well, no, I mean, it'll just be incoherent wheezing on our side. But in the EU, it seemed like they did a little better.
Well, Italy was, they're an EU country, and they were one of the first to strike out at AI. And they kind of did it for the wrong reason, and then it was immediately fixed. But now they're once again trying to get out in front of this AI bulldozer that's going to change all of our lives.
Italy allocates funds to shield workers from AI replacement threat.
Now, it's not exactly like universal income. It's more about retraining. But I just don't think that some people can be retrained to be all that useful in the coming post-AI world.
Or you retrain them, but whatever job they're doing pays dramatically less. So it's basically moot.
Maybe we could just train them to be those, like we were talking about last week, where you have to go in and correct the AI. And you just, you spend your whole day reading prompts and choosing the correct one.
Yeah, if you read some of the reports on the job growth here in the U.S., it's like we lost all these really high value jobs, and now we've got a bunch more jobs, but the jobs that we got back are nowhere near as good as the high value jobs.
Yeah, you have to
that
have
we
like
lost.
3 of them to actually make cost of living.
We also had an attempt here, because this used to be coal country. You don't do coal anymore, but someone tried to take the coal miners and turn them into web developers. It was such a spectacular failure.
Yeah.
On average, it did not work out.
On average, it was overwhelming.
There were 1 or 2 success stories.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, it's just totally different skill sets. Also, like, just you flood one market with a bunch of people, and then all of a sudden the wages go down there. So it's like,
I wouldn't worry too much about that. I think it'll just end up being universal income. And then that'll be total control. Universal digital currency.
Universal income would work for the 1 or 2 web developers that actually made the transition, but for the other people, no.
And some more information about that tax plan and some more of the things that are sort of added to it that weren't part of the original equation.
EU crypto tax plans include NFTs, foreign companies, and some other stuff, the draft text shows.
So they definitely, the biggest concern here, they don't want money leaving the EU. So anytime that you're trying to move money around with this, that's not allowed.
Also look at things like this, like the HSBC money laundering for criminals. And it's like, does this leave a keyhole for criminals to be able to use it for those kind of things? And the EU did not leave any kind of hole for that, which actually can be important for adopting this kind of thing. You got to leave criminals some way to do it. Otherwise, very high echelons of things don't want to see these things adopted.
It's ridiculous.
It is.
And France is, at this point, I think they're just throwing darts at a board that has different things to go after the tech companies for. And they're almost always going to be right because these companies are awful and they do all these terrible things.
France opens investigation into Apple over alleged planned obsolescence, quote unquote, for smartphones.
they should do this with literally everything that's manufactured now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they point out, obviously you can't change the battery and all these different things. The updates cause it to get worse and worse. We know that that's true. What can you say here? Of course they're right.
I replaced the battery in a Galaxy S8 a couple weeks ago. I think I've mentioned this on a few episodes now. And it's great. It runs fabulously. And it's a Galaxy S8. That's like 1920s level technology.
But how do we get you to buy a new phone every year if you can just replace the battery?
I mean, it runs shockingly great.
Well, Krista, are you still watching Netflix?
Yes.
Not for long.
Netflix takes aim at account sharing, implications for UK telecom bundles.
So account sharing lockouts are coming this year for the US. And over in the UK, apparently you can get Netflix as part of your cable package, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how that works.
Cable package? What's cable?
But somehow that's going to be affected now because obviously for the whole password sharing thing, they're like, there's a lot of that happening here. So people are going to have to get on their own plan. And they expect a lot of problems with that. So they're trying to get ahead of it.
Yeah, I think they already briefed the shareholders and were like, this is probably not going to be good.
Also, disgustingly, after they did it, what was it? Canada they tried it in? What country did they?
They trialed it somewhere.
Wherever they trialed it, they had a big spike down, obviously, but then those people all came crawling back. And a lot of the accounts that were sharing ended up being 2 accounts, so they slightly raised above the attrition rate.
That's impressive.
You poor addicts. Look what you're doing to us.
Meanwhile, Mom has discovered Seinfeld on the thing, and it's just been 24 hours of Seinfeld for days now.
Do you feel like that gives her joy?
Did she watch the original run of Seinfeld? Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. So it's like her binge watch. It's like me watching House over and over.
It's easy to go back and look at Seinfeld through the lens of 2023 and say it wasn't that great, but it was pretty funny. Oh. And AWS, Amazon, they are looking to expand their global coverage, and they're throwing around some big dollars.
AWS to invest $12.7 billion in India. We have a lot of stories about India and the economy and the economic growth there. It's a world of opportunity for India.
And also, every company is looking at the global picture, and they're like, we've got to get out of China.
Yeah. Bad things are coming.
Uncertainty is bad for business.
And when you're not making your phones and your laptops in China, what are you going to do?
India is going to spend $2.1 billion to lure laptop makers. And looking into this, their plan is to do that sort of vocational retraining thing. It's like, we're going to train everybody that's willing to do it on how to do the Foxconn style factory work, attention, quality to detail, all of the stuff that goes into that. And it's like, wow, way to shoot for the moon, India.
I like the stock image they picked for this article is the painted elephant, implying that that's how they're luring laptop makers.
That guy's gonna be in charge of quality control.
Yeah.
Laptops.
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's the Fudzilla article or, if you're in India I know the caste system is a thing, but you some of the language that's used in this article really that kind of bleeds through. It's like the unwashed masses will assemble the laptops and they will be very happy about it. And we will meet them in the streets with the elephants in order to explain to them how to build laptops. And it's just like, that's kind of dark.
What they'll do is they'll teach them to, it's like, okay, you're going to solder this one thing.
Yeah.
And you're going to do it 800 times a day. And then they'll go good at it.
Which
the Henry Ford model.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's good, but
it was, the people who originally did the Ford thing though quit in droves because they still had enough autonomy as humans. They were like, no, this is not what humans should be doing.
And I say that I think they could have presented it in a way that's less derogatory than the article because, here we need the same thing here. Like when we're retraining people to do the stuff here, it's like, we're going to train everybody on how to diffuse silicon. And it's like, I don't think we're going to be able to take the coal miners and retrain them on spinning silicon wafers. I mean, one or two might be okay with that, but
I think you're kind of buying into the whole idea of like, no, just learn enough to be useful and stop and be a good citizen. I think that's the problem.
Yeah.
Don't ever stop.
You need the ingenuity. Like the ingenuity is what I want to encourage. There are some people that are happiest in like the factory role, but there are people that are not happy in that, and they need to be able to stretch their wings. But how do we give them both?
The people who are happy in the factory role get to vote. That's the problem. Because then we have uninformed populace making terrible decisions for all of us, and we get where we are now. We need to go back to the men of the revolution who were writing poetry and growing tobacco and running stills, fighting, doing government.
Doing duels in the streets with pistols.
We'll leave out the slaves part. We're good. That was the bad part. Over in Taiwan, we have some disturbing developments, although it's nothing new. It's just more of the same, but it's terrifying.
China says it's ready to smash, quote unquote, Taiwan self-rule as U.S. prepares major arms package and sends advisors.
You get to be there.
I get to be
right
there.
Right after they make those kind of comments. Yeah.
They slipped a note to the Taiwan leadership that said, let me smash.
I was there. There's like a Remembrance Day. I think it's like a Tiananmen Square Remembrance Day thing that happens. And sometimes that lines up with Computex. And they take the drills very seriously. So like the place I was staying, there was our equivalent of an interstate, and there was a parade of tanks and stuff. It was like, no, this isn't a drill. Everybody's inside, everybody out of their car, park, whatever, don't care where you are. And everybody knew how to do everything and went inside. And it's like, oh, I'm going to be the absent-minded American that wanders outside during this. And they were like, no, you wait. It's like, okay, sounds good. Fun times.
This is an interesting story in terms of like the African world is so much different than ours. It turns out that a lot of people in Africa don't have smartphones. They have old dumb phones, but they still need to use it as their only piece of connectivity. They don't have a PC either. So there's a lot of SMS banking and communication and stuff like that But those charges pile up, and the banks don't seem to be fond of paying them.
Nigerian telcos get approval to disconnect banks for USSD debt.
That's not the United States dollar. That's the unstructured supplementary service data. So basically, they already knew that these banks weren't paying these bills, and the telecoms were very upset. So the government said, no, you can't cut them off because poor people need this. And that sunset is now running out.
Was there some access that was connected to the China Belt and Road thing where they would come in and say, we'll pay the debt, but you have to do this thing?
They are never open about what those rules are. But we do know some countries, for example, will have like a port and China will help them build the port. But then if they default on the debt, China gets half the port, no questions asked. They run their own, it'll be a military port someday. And there's nothing you can do about it for like a 99-year lease or something like that.
Interesting.
I'm sure there's a
Terrible.
lot of that coming over in Africa. And whenever our Chinese overlords conquer the world and begin to treat everybody like the Chinese live, it's going to be so much easier for them to keep track of all of us.
China, wait, your DNA can now be pulled from the air, thin air. Privacy experts are worried.
So some scientists were actually trying to study animals, and they wanted to know if the animals had like ever been in an area or whatever. So they came up with a way to just look at all the DNA just floating around in the air, and they got pretty good at it. And they were just filtering out all the human DNA. They didn't care about it, but it could be harvested the same way that the turtles could be harvested. So if you walk through a room, you're going to linger there for some time.
So much biomass.
Moving toward Gattaca every day.
Somewhere there's an asteroid that has amber that is filled with, remnants of biological material from somewhere else.
Probably true. Just based on the size of the galaxy.
Yeah. But you also realize that, the galaxy is going to churn out planets for another couple of trillion years. We're the old ones in the Lovecraft sense. We really are the great old ones. And that's horrifying.
We suck at being the old.
Yeah. Well, give us time. Look at the trajectory that we're on. I think we're making some promising strides to become the great old ones.
Well,
have you seen some of the billionaires we have? Imagine, a trillion years of that.
Well, China, they do like to keep an eye on everything, and not necessarily just in China. They like to look at everything, and we try to stop them from doing that, but they have more and more clever ways of getting around it.
Malware turns home routers into proxies for Chinese state-sponsored hackers. Following footsteps of VPN filter, new firmware obscures hackers' endpoints.
So this isn't about taking over your router and mining Monero or even spying on you. They don't really even care about you. You're not important enough. It's all about being able to route their hacking activities through your router or use it as command and control to give instructions that will hide who's actually giving the instructions.
Fun times.
And then you get a visit from the FBI and they take all of your electronic equipment and shoot your dog.
And take years to decide that you're not actually involved.
And you never get it back.
You never get a sorry card from them about the dog either.
No, I don't care. And we're entering into a phase where data, even as valuable as it has been, is going to get more valuable. Because now, instead of running all this complicated, data mining and stuff and figuring it out, you're just going to feed it to an AI. And your AI gets better. It has immediate value. So what do? Well, you get data any way you can. And the easiest way is to give free stuff.
Telly, the free smart TV with ads, has privacy policy red flags. Yeah, it's because there is no privacy policy. You are the product.
No, there's a privacy policy. And it's astonishing because someone forgot to revise the privacy policy before it went into production. This highlighted part here is what's important.
I don't know that this is accurate. Do we have to say that we will delete the information, or is there another way around this?
It's under the heading for children.
Talking about 13 years old. So obviously what they actually say before that, and the part that we were supposed to see, is like, if you're 13, don't look at this TV. Which obviously people are going to definitely follow that rule, right? But yeah, the crazy thing about this this little bar down here is always on and always showing ads.
That was a joke in 30 Rock like 10 years ago.
And also Futurama,
I know.
which is coming back. We weren't paid to say that.
I wonder if they have a way of detecting if I cover that up.
Probably.
Please uncover.
I thought I'd read
Drink
that
your Mountain Dew can.
I'd read that it had a camera in it to at least
I also read that.
for presence detection.
We're literally moving toward the Mountain Dew green text
Yeah.
every day.
Also, it mines all the data about what you're watching and who you are and blah blah blah. But every smart TV is doing that.
Yeah.
This one has just added an extra piece directly for ads.
Yeah, the LG smart TVs that I've done a deep dive on this don't even do it competently. You stick in a flash drive and it literally tries to send the file names back to LG. Like,
I wonder if, like, the ad companies paying for the ads on the big screen are upset about the ads on the little screen. It's like, no, you're pulling eyeballs away from our ads now.
And then all of a sudden, it's just ads all the way down.
are you trying to put a stop to this by getting them to fight one another? It's kind of smart, actually.
I don't think that'll save us.
No.
Just make them stronger. Whoever wins will just be more powerful. And smart home items. We've talked a lot about smart home items and how they're generally a bad idea if they're super convenient. Now, if you totally understand what's happening and you do it yourself, maybe smart home is okay. But something like this,
Wemo won't fix smart plug vulnerability, allowing remote operation. May I suggest you reflash these with Tasmota, which will allow you to jettison these jokers immediately.
so you're going to name these little guys. Obviously, you're going to have more than one, right? You want to see which one it is in your home. That's a 30-character limit. Now, if you use their app, it will limit you to 30 characters. If you access it in any other way, it won't, and the buffer will immediately overflow.
Fun times. And they're not planning to fix that.
Oh, yeah.
We have your money. We're not fixing it.
They have a new version of this, so these will never get fixed.
But also, just use Tasmota on something else. Because why?
And our phones contain all of our information. They are our lives at this point, as terrifying as that is. But a cop can just take it. They can take it. They can look at whatever's on it. They can keep it forever. If you get convicted, they're going to sell it. And they're not going to do anything about the privacy issues there.
Re-Victimization from police auction cell phones. This article has a helpful table. They bought all kinds of phones at auction. Some of them worked fine. Some of them didn't have a passcode. Some of them they were able to guess the passcode. Some of them had a passcode, but the police helpfully included what the passcode was that they got from the gray key that they used to break into the phone. Fun times.
Pretty much everyone they looked at had some kind of compromising information. If not, just from your personal text messages, a lot of them had financial data where they'd gotten text messages about their taxes or about pay stubs.
Well, some of these phones belonged to criminals who had collected information on their victims on their phones, which included name, social security number, credit history, credit card numbers, etc. So someone else, a third party's credit card numbers, more than one, were on some of these phones, which the criminals had been using as part of their criminal operation.
If Apple was doing that, they'd fine them $100 million.
Yeah.
These phones on average will cost about $18. But you don't know what you're going to get. It's a grab bag. And Microsoft is very serious about all of us moving to the cloud. If you're not sure about that, just use Windows for 10 minutes and they'll harass you in so many different ways.
Try to use Windows for 10 minutes.
Go to the cloud. We need you in the cloud. Why do they want us in the cloud? Well, for money, but also to monitor.
Microsoft is scanning the inside of password-protected zip files for malware. Now, there's two halves of this. The first half is that you get an email that actually contains malware, and in the email message it says the password to the zip file that has the contract in it is, fumbles. And Microsoft has made their thing smart enough to look in the email for the password to decrypt the zip file to look for malware. That's pretty cool. But it also scans all of your other stuff.
Cool.
Yeah, to look for malware. Because the password was in the email. It wasn't secure. If you're so stupid that you send the password for the email in the email that has the attachment, you deserve your fate.
If you're stupid enough to think that's all they're looking for,
Yeah.
you deserve your fate.
Yeah.
That's terrible. You shouldn't be doing that. The security researcher figured this out because he was actually sending malware on purpose, and he used zip files to get around what was already being, filtered out, wouldn't be able to send them. And they caught him anyway.
They now his is interesting because he did not include the password, but it was using a commonly used password in order to look inside the zip file. So if you use a strong enough password, it can't look inside the zip file, obviously. But that wasn't
For now.
That wasn't what happened here.
And the cloud is, they claim it's much safer. That might not be true because the thing about the cloud is people can just bang on it all day long, right? They can look for any kind of vulnerability and eventually they'll find them.
Microsoft Azure VMs hijacked in the cloud in cloud Cyberattack. This is really interesting because the bad guys got in and it's like, okay, we've cleaned up, the bad guys are out again. But the bad guys enabled serial debug console, which is a thing that is kind of esoteric even among Microsoft Cloud customers. And so they were able to use the serial console to come back in after they had been expunged from the environment, which is actually pretty clever.
And I remember when this was done as a convenience thing.
Yeah.
And they just went out of their way. They were like, nobody's being forced to do this. This is voluntary. We got this program. You can sign up for it. It makes everything easier. And then a couple of people wrote articles like, I tried not to do it. And here's what happened.
Yeah.
And they end up sitting in a room for like an hour and getting asked 10 million questions. All their stuff gets opened up and pilfered and run through. And now, obviously, the frogs have boiled enough. It's time to turn the heat up.
TSA is testing facial recognition at more airports, raising privacy concerns.
Hey, this is going to be you this week.
Yeah, it's just they're just going to do it now because they were doing it all along before anyway.
So you got your new upgraded driver's license. What do they call that? Real ID.
Yeah.
So you plug your Real ID in this little machine and it scans your face and it makes sure that you're the person on the driver's license. And then you go through. They say it's a big improvement because you don't ever have to hand your driver's license to another human being. But it's recording literally everything that's happening here. So it's worse than that. There's probably no getting around that. They say it's still optional, but I'm sure we'll see somebody who's tried it and writes about their experience and it'll be a misery. And Discord. Oh, man. Well, we'll do the headline first.
Discord discloses a data breach after a support agent got hacked. Yeah.
So somebody got phished or social engineered. They got they didn't get records of like user records. What they got was anybody who had interacted with that support agent. So we got their entire history of chatting with people with support. If they give them any personal information or anything during that, that's gone too. The thing that drives me crazy here is that they said that I can't find the quote here.
While I believe that risk is limited, it is recommended that you be vigilant for any suspicious messages or activity.
Oh, no, here it is. They worked with the customer service partner to implement effective measures to prevent similar incidents in the future. That makes me think that customer service partner was not employed by Discord.
Yeah.
It was a third party. And instead of firing them or cutting off that relationship, they just retrained them. Like, don't let this happen again.
I'm surprised Discord even has support. I was kind of like surprised by that.
Well, they're getting huge now.
Yeah, I mean, everyone uses Discord.
And in Japan, everyone drives a Toyota, which is probably you think this was on purpose?
No.
Because this also shows what Toyota knows about you.
Toyota Japan exposed millions of vehicles' location data for a decade. Didn't matter if you signed up for Toyota's cloud thingy. The cloud thingy was in there all along.
And it was reporting back to a database that anybody could connect to. Every location that you went to, every little thing about the car, I think even like turn signals log this stuff.
Dumb cars just looking better every day.
Yeah.
I think you have to go back pretty far to get a car dumb enough to not be part of this, though.
Or just take the SIM out.
Yeah, they did say decade, huh?
They make that very difficult.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it'll throw codes when it can't get to those kinds of things. I think you have to end up taking the antenna out.
That makes sense.
Bleak.
As usual.
Yeah.
It's coming to TVs.
The TV one was really dystopian.
Well, I mean, it's a cost thing, right? It doesn't in the cost of a vehicle. It's a rounding error to implement this kind of technology in a vehicle for 10 years. Pretty soon, it's going to be a rounding error in the cost of a television, even though the television's only $100, $200.
Be a great way to train AI.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, well, with that sad thought, we'll leave you guys and see you later this week. Bye.